everyone, and welcome to the 9th Annual Bhaktivedanta Swami Lecture. We're pleased that you could join us via the various online platforms. My name is Megan Weber, and I'm currently employed as a Principal Consultant with Alexander Forbes. Today's topic, the mind, friend or foe, ties in with the experiences of famous celebrities to ordinary folk across the globe who grapple with depression, anxiety, and mental health challenges. It's a much needed discussion topic, and the role that religious or faith-based organizations can play is meaningful. A special welcome to Bhuta Bhavana Dasa, our speaker for today.
Thank you.
I would like to introduce to you the CEO of the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust Africa, Mr. Naresh Gopichand, who was appointed in January of this year. He is currently the new business director at Atlas Finance. He also serves as the chairman of the Finance Committee and a director of Microfinance South Africa. Mr. Gopichand has been with the BBT since 2011 and has served the organization in various roles. Chairperson of the Charitable Fund, trustee of the Back to Godhead Trust, and manager of book translation and production. I would now like to hand over to Mr. Gopichand.
Thank you, Megan. Welcome, Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu. Thank you for being with us today. And to all our audience on Facebook and YouTube, thank you for joining us this afternoon. I would like to also acknowledge our Emeritus Trustee, His Holiness Jayaveda Swami, and His Grace Govardhan Das, the Senior Trustee of the African BBT. Coming together and participating in events like these gives us an opportunity to discuss pertinent topics and challenges that face humanity and allows us to explore possible solutions to these challenges from a more spiritual and holistic point of view. Mental health has received considerable attention over the past 20 years, and it affects us all regardless of our socio-economic backgrounds. It's evident we live in a stressful society. The impact of social media, cyberbullying, the COVID-19 pandemic has taken toll on our lives. Research has shown that religiosity and spirituality plays a pivotal role in positive mental well-being. These belief systems help humanity find a higher sense of purpose and inner peace. It also helps us cope with depression, stress, terminal illness, anxiety, and suicide. According to the World Health Organization, suicide is the 4th leading cause of death amongst 15 to 29-year-olds. Does the Vedic viewpoint hold some of the answers that could help us with this alarming trend? Is it possible to overcome these challenges that we sometimes face and harness the mind to tap into a higher intelligence? Our keynote speaker, Bhuta Bhavana Dasa, will enlighten us on how to navigate our way around the complexities of the mind. The Bhaktivedanta Book Trust was founded in 1972 by His Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada and is the world's largest publisher of ancient and classic Vaishnava texts and contemporary works of philosophy, theology, and culture of the Vedic of Bhakti Yoga. He has authored and translated more than 70 volumes of books based on timeless Vedic wisdom that were previously locked in the Sanskrit text in English. The Bhaktivedanta Book Trust has published Srila Prabhupada's books in more than 90 languages, which includes titles in English, Swahili, Zulu, Xhosa, and Setswana, and has many more titles in production in various other African languages. Today, his books are the preferred authoritative academic text in the ideology studies in universities across the globe. The Bhaktivedanta Book Trust African Division has been hosting the Bhaktivedanta Swami Lecture since 2013 and has become one of our hallmark events honoring Srila Prabhupada's important literary and social contribution. We have in the past collaborated with the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, the Nelson Mandela Foundation, and the Thuli Madonsela Foundation Trust. This innovative forum engages current and future leaders in analyzing the issues facing our world today and provides insights from a vantage point of Vedic knowledge. The lecture has drawn the attention of global audiences, tackling issues in education, leadership, economics, and social transformation. With this background, I would like to officially welcome you all to the 9th annual Bhaktivedanta Swami lecture. I now hand over to you, Megan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gopichand. In 2021, there were approximately 100 million people in Africa suffering from mental illness. Recent statistics also show that 3 out of the top 10 countries with the most suicides are actually situated in Africa. There are, of course, various causes for this, and the issue has many complexities. However, the treatment of mental illness and the stigma around it are 2 aspects that need to be addressed. There are critical areas with influence over mental wellness. During COVID-19 lockdowns, we all experienced how social media could play both a positive and a negative role in mental health. The depressed economies throughout Africa leave many without a living income. The high tide and culture of materialism, where I'm not good enough if I don't have X, Y, and Z, also contributes to this. And then lastly, the lack of love and a feeling of belonging also results in suicide attempts. It is interesting to note the change of terminology we see nowadays, from hearing that the person committed suicide to hearing that the person died of depression, with the latter being likely the more correct option. Many of us in our lives have times when the mental and emotional loads that we carry become too heavy to bear. It is in these times that we become prone to anxiety and depression. Once we are anxious and depressed, we may need to reach out for help. For many people, this is difficult, but you are encouraged to vote for yourself and for your wellness and seek help. It could be sharing our feelings with a good friend, a spiritual leader maybe, meditating or seeking counseling with a psychologist. In other cases, if needed, a psychiatrist can provide medication to assist with the treatment of these illnesses. I have personally been through the experience of anxiety and depression myself. I was very fortunate to have a wonderful friend to share my thoughts with and my worries. I have my faith, and I also had a trusted psychologist to help me. Being able to say I've been through it can encourage others to come forward to get the help that they need. With this backdrop, I would like to introduce Bhuta Bhavana Dasa to share insights from Vedic knowledge on how faith-based religious organizations have a role to play in combating mental health challenges. From a young age, Bhuta Bhavana had a deep interest in the intersection between spirituality, psychology, and personal development. He graduated from the London School of Economics, where he studied philosophy and economics, and then went on to earn a master's in politics and sociology. Presently, he is an international consultant and mentor to many leaders and professionals around the world. He is a globally renowned speaker and leader and co-creator with his wife of the Ed Anoba podcast. Bhuta Bhavana has been on the path of Bhakti Yoga for over 25 years and has a unique gift for translating the timeless knowledge of Eastern teachings of the Vedas into practical strategies and solutions that provide answers to modern-day social, psychological, and interpersonal concerns. He was personally trained by his mentor and mine, Bhaktivedanta Swami, disciple of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Bhaktivedanta Swami himself was a world-renowned author, speaker, teacher, guru, and advisor to many heads of state and celebrities, including Muhammad Ali. I'm also fortunate to have known Bhuta Bhavana Dasa for many years, and we are privileged to have him with us today. Please join the conversation by sending comments or questions. The links will be put up for you on the screen above. So thanks, Bhuta Bhavana, and over to you.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. It is a real pleasure to be here with all of you at such a critical time in human history. This topic, the mind, friend or foe, is such a pertinent topic to our times, and we're very honored to be here as we go on the journey together to try to explore, share, and apply ancient insights that can help us to deal with modern day personal, social, and psychological challenges. I think the first thing we need to do in a situation like this is set the frame. So we're talking about the mind. We've heard comments previously about the importance of the mind and the trends around mental health. There's a study by San Diego State University's psychology department where they have found a real correlation between the increasing trends around social media and technology and increasing anxiety, depression, loneliness, etc. So we live in a time where literally the instruments of communication have perhaps never been at their highest. Yet people's sense of deep connection and satisfaction is going down in a really fast and accelerated sense. So we know that this is a worldwide concern, both in the African states and in states or countries all around the world. And this really brings us to the point that we are trying to address here. How does the ancient knowledge, the timeless knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita, the texts of Bhakti Yoga, how do they have a role to play, and what can they do to illuminate for each and every one of us what is going on, why it's happening, and most importantly, what we can do about it. Okay? So in order to frame this conversation, I want to say up front, we feel very passionately about this topic. What we will be sharing with you over this period, and then we'll take questions and answers, is not just a philosophy. The timeless teachings of the Vedic literature, Veda meaning knowledge, it dates back over 5,000 years ago, dealing with the human condition on both a psychological, sociological, and ultimately from an internal, or we would say spiritual perspective. So these teachings were always meant to be applied practically because they are of a very universal quality and can therefore address issues across the board. There's 4 things we want you to recall as we go through this discussion. The abbreviation that we will use is MIND. M, I, N, and D. Okay, so we provide this up front as a framework by which we can hang all the insights that we will be sharing. The first letter M stands for meaning. In all traditions of higher knowledge, all systems of developing higher consciousness, all different spiritual or religious paths, one of the most powerful gems that they provide is a sense of meaning through meditation. We live in a society where the mind is constantly being pulled in different directions. So we know, for example, so a friend of mine calls Facebook, they call it fake book. Okay? And the reason why they call it that is that they told me, they said, I've noticed whenever people go onto these social media platforms, they always leave thinking that the grass is greener on the other side. Isn't that interesting? So when we look at some of the mental health challenges, part of this sense of loneliness and anxiety and depression is the idea that we interact online, seemingly watching all of our associates having such a great time, always smiling, sending pictures of the latest meal wherever they're going. I've seen on many occasions, many times, images of people that I know. They're smiling, they're hugging each other, and I know for a fact that they don't like each other. So this idea of meaning through meditation is the first contribution to this discussion through literature such as the Bhagavad Gita and through the understanding of universal spiritual or dharmic principles, which is that for us to be more mentally strong, more mentally focused, more mentally resilient, we need to be leading a life of meaning, accessed by meditation and sustained by motive. So think about what this means for each and every one of us. When we have a deep meaning to our existence, when we have a goal, a path that helps us to elevate our awareness, elevate our consciousness, and see the trials and tribulations of life in their proper context, then it literally changes the very way that we feel. This is a very, very powerful point. Meaning gives context to our existence. I was running late for a meeting, and I was running to the bus stop near my home to catch the bus to go to this appointment. I got onto the public transport. The person who was driving the car, driving the vehicle, the bus, they said something negative. I didn't quite catch what they said. They said it again. People like you, you're slowing us down. We're behind schedule, etc. And it was interesting. I could understand intuitively they're stressed. But now I was also stressed by what they were saying to me. I turned to the side. I could see all the passengers on the bus looking at me. And I don't know if you've had this experience when you sometimes have like a dark cloud just forming above your head because you're just feeling annoyed, irritated, frustrated. But then something very, very interesting happened. As we were going on the journey, I thought to myself, okay, I'd given a presentation just the weekend before this incident, and the presentation was on the subject of forgiveness. So I thought to myself, okay, I have to practice what I preach. I went to the bus driver and I said, I'm sorry if I did something that upset you. The moment I said that, the bus driver gave me the context of their experience. They apologized. Then they explained how they were under pressure because if they don't reach each particular location by the right time, they get criticized by their manager. They explained to me how their organization was making redundancies. They were fearful for losing their job. They explained to me how a member of their family had some health concern, which was also playing on their mind. By the time we got to my stop, I was not upset with them at all because I had context. This is a very, very powerful point. Each point I'm going to give you, if you unpack the gift, if we unpack the gift and apply the present, these factors can make tremendous differences in our existence. So this idea of meaning through meditation. So by having proper meaning to our lives, by understanding ultimate meaning, ultimately how we can be connected through meditation in the path of, or in the development of higher consciousness. In our tradition, we say connecting with the Supreme. And in our Bhakti Yoga connection, we especially emphasize mantra meditation. Meditation which is done by hearing and repeating divine names of the Supreme. So this is the first gift from the insights of Bhakti Yoga, the insights of Bhagavad Gita, which can help us. Always keep in mind that we have a higher purpose, a higher meaning, and that meaning can be experienced through meditation if we keep motivated to develop higher consciousness and a connection with the Supreme. That is the first insight. We said there were 4 letters, M-I-N-D. I stands for internal investment. Many of us, we live our lives investing in our education. We may invest in our health. I had such a powerful experience over the last few years in relation to this idea of internal investment. I saw during the last 2 years where there were many people who were very much shaken by the changing circumstances, a global pandemic, lockdowns, social unrest. Amongst these very destabilizing trends, I noticed that there were a group of individuals in my life who were able to move or navigate through these events in a really powerful way. And I started to do a comparison. What was it that this group were doing that was different to the others who were very much rocked by those circumstances? What I saw was this internal investment. And I would say actually slightly more than that. It's an internal investment that we take the initiative for. What was I seeing? There were certain people in my community, in my networking circle, who had gone very deep in investing internally. So, as I said, where most people were just investing in external activities, social activities, leisure activities, these people had been working on themselves. They'd been trying to develop higher wisdom. They'd been trying to develop self-awareness. They'd been trying to cultivate deep, meaningful, supportive, high-quality association and friendships. And they had done that when there was no emergency happening. And so this brings about this idea of community, that we are as strong and we are as informed as our network. So what I saw was that because these people had built strong bonds, they built real relationships where they could do what? They could literally reveal their mind, they could be open and honest, and they could get meaningful advice. In one of the most powerful literatures in the Bhakti Yoga tradition, there's it is called the Nectar of Instruction. Within it, it mentions what is called the Priti Lakshanam, and these are considered 6 loving exchanges. Within those, there are the loving exchanges of revealing the mind, so being very open and honest about what we're dealing with, and inquiring confidentially, which means being open to good advice, deep advice, in fact, being open to wisdom. So those people that I knew who had been engaging in this and had gone deep in these kinds of relationships, because they had invested internally and invested wisely, they had such a support structure that literally whatever was happening to them, let's put it another way, whatever was happening around them was not necessarily happening within them. So the second contribution we can make to this idea of stronger mental health is to build meaningful networks and associations where we can be open and honest and where we can receive guidance, receive wisdom. We sometimes call this transcendental knowledge that literally helps us to grow and become strong. I can't emphasize this enough. We need to become a society that really develops the internal strength rather than just the external resources. Okay. So M stands for meaning. Having a life where there's more focus on the higher meaning, which puts everything else that we experience into context. I stands for internal investment. The idea that when we study literatures of wisdom, there are many across the world, across cultures, across history. One of our primary literatures is the Bhagavad Gita as it is, which really explains the human condition in a very deep way, along with the goal of the human existence. So, meaning, internal investment. N stands for needs versus wants. Unfortunately, we see that modern advertising is so sophisticated that it can literally bombard us and literally play into our insecurities. You're unhappy in life. The reason why you're unhappy is because you haven't bought my product, my service. But if you buy whatever I'm selling, your life will suddenly change, right? But that's actually wrong. There was an initiative, I believe it was by the British Medical Association. They actually sent an initiative to the UK government asking for more controls and more restrictions around modern advertising. And their argument was very simple, that modern advertising is so sophisticated that if we don't put more healthy boundaries around it, it can literally trigger more and more insecurities in the population. And by doing so, cause them to behave in ways which are counter to their deep and lasting well-being. So the third factor is to really consider and to start to focus more on our needs and less on being programmed and manipulated by advertising, which can cause us to go in the direction of things which aren't really fundamentally essential to us, but now we've become bound or entangled by. Okay. So we talked about having meaning in our lives, having a real focus, understanding what is the goal and looking for that. Searching in our existence, searching through books of wisdom, searching by associating with and inquiring from those who have more insight, especially those who have a life which is built around wisdom, around spiritual development, to inquire from those people. How do we understand things more? How do we understand meaning more? And how do we engage with meditation, which will help us to achieve and experience that deep sense of meaning? We said I is the internal investment. I train leaders, that's my day job. And I'm always speaking to them about what we call the preemptive strike. And please take this on board. What I'm sharing with you, this is not a philosophical conversation. This is not just it's not just a few concepts or ideas. I have seen in my own life and in the life of others that if we start to apply some of these principles, it can lead to a profound experience in our life, a much greater sense of satisfaction. This I meaning internal investment. We should not wait for the emergency. We should not wait for the emergency. We want to be those individuals who are constantly growing and becoming stronger inside. In the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about spiritual strength, internal strength. And the idea is that when people are developing themselves through a bona fide system of spiritual wisdom, it helps them to be much more stable and strong within. So in the Bhagavad Gita, in the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, which is the essence of that Bhagavad Gita, which is the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna at one point, Chanchala hi mana Krishna, or Arjuna says that to Krishna, that the mind is very difficult to control. And Krishna agrees with him. He says, absolutely, but it can be done. By regulation, by practice, by detachment. So please do check that out. We said N stands for needs versus wants. If you would like to, I invite you to do an activity. And I did this a few weeks ago. And you can do this in your own time. Make a list of what you actually need. Make a list of what you want. And then in life, start with the need. Prioritize the needs and see what happens. It was an incredible revelation for me. I started to see how many people in their life, they were dissatisfied because they were neglecting their true needs and being manipulated to chase after things that they just wanted. So what are true needs? True needs are therefore real community, real association, where you care about those people care about you. There's a need for security, both psychological safety and physical safety. But there's also a need, and this is often neglected in society, there's a need for spiritual development. And that brings us to the last letter. So M, meaning. I, internal investment. N, needs versus wants. D is development. There's a need for internal or spiritual development. When we live our life by higher values, when we engage in meditative practices that raise consciousness and help us to connect, literally, yoga means union. And the fundamental or essential meaning of yoga, according to the Bhagavad Gita, is Bhakti Yoga, is union with the Supreme. And as we have that, we have access through that connection to literally unlimited sources of strength, inspiration, knowledge, and realization as well. These are gifts. These are the unclaimed gifts of humanity. And these gifts can become the antidote to many of the challenges in mental health that we are facing across the board. And I want to be very clear on that. This is not to say that if we do not have specific conditions that we should not seek professional help. We're not saying that at all. We're saying that whatever professional help is required, one should get that. But alongside that, there is an incredible and untapped opportunity to start to explore how these wisdom traditions, Bhagavad Gita as it is, etc., can supplement, support, and enhance literally everything that we're doing by both strengthening the mind, reinvigorating the mind, and also bringing great clarity to the mind as we go through this journey that we call the human condition. So we wanted to leave you those 4 factors to consider. I'm going to hand back over now to see how we go forward.
Thought-provoking lecture. I think what I admired most about it is that what many of us lack is the ability to structure a plan around improving our lives and then implementing it going forward. And I think most of us will remember the mind details today. And it really does give you a good basis for actually looking at yourself and then working your way through those steps and deciding on a way forward. The other point that I wanted to raise, it's just something that I look at personally, and perhaps you can comment on it, is we often get trapped into the sort of the net of, if I can just have $1 million, then I'll do ABC, and then I will be happy. You know, if I can just get that $1 million, that Ferrari, then I'll be happy. But to me, it actually works the other way around, because you may never get that. So what do you do first? First, you need to be. And I think that is what you alluding to here, is that first we need to be. We have to have our mind in order. Then we will have the happiness, the stress-free lives that we're all wanting. And then we'll be able to do what it is that we really want to do. looking at the differences between what are our needs, what are our wants, where do we have to develop in our lives. So I'm not sure if you have anything you'd like to add to that point of view.
Absolutely. There was a study on this. One study, they were looking at what comes first. Does success come first and then happiness, or does happiness come first and then success? Now, look, let's be very clear. On a practical level, there are some basic resources that an individual requires to exist. Okay? But I do emphasize that what's happened in the modern world is that we have overemphasized the external, and we've literally repressed or diminished the significance of the internal. Now let's just really think about this. If someone said to you, I'm prepared to give you $1 million, but on the basis that you will never experience any internal peace of mind, only a fool will sign that kind of contract. We know intuitively that we will only be able to experience in a positive way anything external if the internal is in good shape.
Yeah.
It is such an obvious understanding. So the beauty of, for example, the path of Bhakti Yoga is that there's no denial of the external. In fact, the idea is that everything is literally a gift from God, let's say. And therefore, everything is meant to be offered back to its proprietor, but with love and devotion. So in a lifestyle where we are cultivating a connection with the divine, in loving devotion, and also having love for the family members of the divine, that life brings a great abundance within the heart, great joy, great bliss, great satisfaction. And that is the direction to go in.
Thanks so much. Okay, we're going to follow on with another question. If human beings are spiritual by nature, then why is it that we're continuously searching for that elusive happiness?
Mm-hmm. So there was a story in relation to this that I wanted to share. I read this many, many years ago, decades ago. And it really was one of the points which really inspired me to go on this inner journey. And so in the story, it was said that there are these angelic beings, and they understand that there's this great gift which will unlock the potential of humankind. And they're thinking, actually, there's these higher beings, let's not say angelic beings, but they're thinking, where can we hide this gift such that humankind will never find it and never be able to fully exploit it? So one of them says we could hide it at the top of the highest mountain. And they discuss and they consider, no, that's a bad idea, because eventually humankind will scale the heights of the highest mountain. They'll find this treasure. And then another one says, you know what, we could hide it in the depths of the deepest ocean. Again, they have some consideration. They decide, no, one day humankind will enter into the depths of the deepest ocean and they'll find that gift. And one of these beings, who's particularly insightful, he's silent for quite some time. And then he tells his associates, I figured it out. He said, what we should do, we should hide the secret of happiness within the human being himself, because that is the one place that he will never think to look.
Sure.
So there's this idea that, yes, we're all looking for happiness. In the Vedic literatures, it's said that we are by nature Sat, Chit, Ananda. We're eternal, so no one wants to grow old and die. We're full of knowledge. That's why everyone's on Google searching for one thing after another, because by nature we're full of knowledge. And to your point, Ananda, we're full of bliss. We're fully joyful and happy. But the question is, why are we looking in the wrong direction? And the answer is, we do not know where the treasure is to be found.
Yeah.
It is also interesting that we can understand by analysis that treasure can't come just by outside factors. When we get something that we don't want, we're unhappy. When we don't get something that we do want, to your previous comment, we're also unhappy, right? But even when we get exactly what we're looking for materially, we're still having some sense of unhappiness, because we know that we will have to leave that thing, or that particular situation or material arrangement is going to leave us. So even just by using our analysis, we can understand we're not saying that we shouldn't interact in the outside world. We have to do that. That's part of our life. But we should also interact on the inner plane. And through those processes of mantra meditation and so on, we can connect to a deep joy that stays with us no matter what the external situation will be.
Now, that is an amazing realization. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
We move on to our second question now, and it's from Tabo. And that is there a need for psychiatrists and psychologists if religion or spirituality is the answer to our mental health? You've mentioned briefly in one of your comments that the two work hand in hand, but is there anything else that you'd like to add on that point?
Okay, it's a very good question. See, the answer is this, and this is a really important, it's a nuanced point, but it's very, very important to understand. Spirituality is a journey. So different people on that spiritual journey will be at different stages of spiritual development. So this lecture is dedicated to A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada was of such an incredible spiritual stature, of such incredible spiritual realization, compassion. He was able to experience of such a divine or high degree of spiritual love that for someone of his stature, he was completely self-sufficient. Now, we may be on the spiritual journey, but we may not be at that stage on the spiritual journey. So what it requires is local guidance, where we explain our situation, or we introspect on our situation, and we see, is my spirituality sufficient that I don't have any other need of additional support? Or do I need this other professional support, which we're not knocking at all, which can help me to stabilize my situation, depending on what my mental health challenges are, so that I can continue to move forward in a healthy and constructive way on the spiritual journey. Okay, so to summarize, because it's such an important point, it requires us to see that if it's an acute mental health challenge which is disrupting so many other things that we want to do, including disrupting our ability to function in a healthy way in society and to move forward in a progressive way on our spiritual journey, then we should consult whoever we need to consult in order to adjust that situation so we can move forward. There are many, therefore, spiritual communities which have practitioners who are also well versed in the psychological, in the mental health arena, so that they can provide that overlap of both spiritual and mental health support.
To me, it's critically important. We can't fool ourselves. We're in the material world, and sometimes, whether it be our brain or something that's linked to our emotions goes wrong, we absolutely need that support and that input, whether it be medication or something else, which basically just corrects you, brings you to a balanced level, like you say, and then you are in a better position to engage your mind in spiritual topics and that sort of thing. So
and just to add that, just to really emphasize that particular point. So this is also why these things, in good community, we don't just make decisions in isolation. Yep. It's very, very important. Without a network of because I may not see myself clearly. I may think I'm fine. But if I've got a network of really supportive peers, they can say, look, the situation is very intense. I really think you do need some professional help here, you know? So it's not just my own opinion about myself.
Yeah.
It's actually doing that in the association of healthy and good guidance so we can move forward. It's so crucial. And one of the reasons why there are so many challenges in terms of mental health is because we are not built to be independent and alone. We are social beings. We're built for relationship, but through so many means, relationships are literally breaking down. and they are being replaced with so many artificial types of connection, i.e. people who are one person on social media and in their real life they're something completely different. You can have people on social media, they're acting like they're the next James Bond, but in their real life, alone, so many different things. So wanted to reinforce that particular point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've had experience of two people very close to me who have committed suicide. And, you know, like you hear often, I would have never seen it coming because that person was always making jokes and they seemed fun, and we never picked up that there was anything wrong with them. And I think on that point, the one thing that really helped me, and I'm sure it can help others, is to make sure or to decide for yourself, let me have this one dedicated person who, if things get really, really bad, I'll turn to. So I have a friend like that who knows everything about me. And if I'm not feeling good and, you know, not being able to get out of a hole, I know that's my one person. So it's encouraging if you can just get that one person that you can turn to who sees the real you, even though you might be putting up a false facade of happiness. I think it's a simple thing that can perhaps go a long way to saving people who would otherwise decide to end their lives.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're moving on to our next question now. It's from Denise on Facebook. How do we protect our inner peace with so much direct, chaotic turmoil?
Okay. Thank you very much for the question, Denise. The key point here is that we should have no sense of complacency regarding the inner peace. So when we talked about these 4 stages, we talked about D standing for development. So consider that in life in general, there's no position to be stagnant. Either we're developing on our spiritual journey or we are regressing. So in order to protect our inner peace, we have to increase our inner peace. The idea is that if we're constantly growing or developing in some way, then it will always increase, and we therefore have no storehouse of internal support that can help us deal with whatever external turmoil is coming. I was giving a presentation recently, and I was explaining to them that it's not what happens to us that's the issue. I mean, it's definitely a factor, but to get the full picture, it's what's happening to us relative to our capacity to deal with it. Okay, to give an analogy, let's say that you've got a huge amount of savings. Then you're made redundant. Okay, it's not good. But because you have a huge amount of savings, you can still maintain yourself while you're looking for the next job. Okay, so something has happened. I've lost my job, but I've got this saving. I've got this capacity. So the capacity will keep me going while I look for another job. In the same way, if we build up our inner peace and inner strength by what we call this sadhana, which means a daily spiritual practice. If I keep building that capacity, then that is a game changer, Denise. Because by building the capacity, I'm making literally an eternal insurance policy. Because what I'm doing by building my own internal peace and internal strength, 2 things happen. And these 2 things are game changers. Number 1, I give what I am. Okay? Your own inner strength, inner peace, if you build it abundantly within you, it will overflow into your relationships with other people. You will literally be able to bring peace to the turmoil that is within other people. That's benefit number 1. Benefit number 2, with your own inner peace, inner capacity, what it means is whatever happens to you, you'll have the resources to move through it. So again, it's not what happens to us. That's part of the equation. But it's my own inner resources relative to the challenge. that really determines how I move forward in life. And so literally, I've seen many, many times, I've seen people and I can see that they're going to run into troubles because they've stopped developing their inner resources. So the moment something happens, they're shaken. Whereas I've seen other people, they keep making that internal investment. And they can go through externally challenging situations and you wouldn't even know. And it's not because the situation didn't happen to them. It's because they built up the strength to handle the situation. And this is something that we can do. This is something that we can make a daily part of our day-to-day lives. If we have the vision to grab that initiative and to take that proactive step.
No, you're so right. It reminds me of Viktor Frankl's book, A Man's Search for Meaning, where he's saying, so many people went through to the concentration camps. Mm-hmm. Some made it and some didn't. And he's saying that how critical it is for each one of us in our lives to have that inner strength and that why. Like, why do we get up in the morning? Why are we working? Why are we doing so many things? And all of it is linked directly to that process that we should be following every day to build up our spiritual courage, our spiritual strength, and become aligned with that practice every day to support us in our mental health.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Denise,
for that question. Yeah. I was just saying, it supports us on all levels.
Yeah, true. Now, the next one is from Linda. Thank you. She's asking, is depression and anxiety linked to karma? Do we bring this condition upon ourselves, or should a person just accept their life?
Okay. Thank you very much for your question, Linda. So the first thing we have to do is understand exactly what karma means. Because sometimes people use karma in the wrong way. They use it more like a criticism or judgment. The word karma means activities. In the Bhagavad Gita, there are 5 themes, right? So there is Ishvara, which means the controller. Jiva, that means the living person. Kala means time. There is, Jiva, Kala, Karma, which is what you're speaking about, which means activities, and Prakriti. Prakriti means the material world. So karma means activities. So when you say, is anxiety and depression linked to karma, that means, is it an activity? Is it something that we do? Okay, so let me answer it like this. Based upon the lifestyle that I lead, I may have more or less susceptibility to various situations. Let's give an example. So going back to the example we gave earlier, if I lead a life and there's certain things which I may have missed, some things, let's say I didn't arrange certain things financially and then I'm made redundant, I'm going to be in anxiety because I've got no money. I need to find a job, and I need to find a job fast, right? So there's an activity, but it's also linked to certain conditions and circumstances. But the ultimate thing to point out here is that each and every one of these conditions can happen to each and every one of us. Okay? When we see another member of humanity, we should understand that we are looking at ourselves in the mirror. Okay? What I do and what I feel for my fellow human being on this planet who is going through difficulty and challenges is what I'm preparing to experience when I go through difficulties and challenges. The purpose of, or one of the things that we can take from whenever we see other people going through suffering and difficulties is the understanding that there are certain trends which are unfortunately part of the human condition. What do I mean by that? Birth is part of the human condition. Death, part of the human condition. Disease, okay? When we hear this word disease, people usually just think about the body. But no, disease also means the mind, right? So when you're talking about anxiety and depression, these are things which people experience in the human condition. Birth, disease, death, old age. So the point is that karma means activities. due to various activities, any one of us at any point in our life may experience anxiety or depression. Give another example. Let's say that I have a deep love for a particular person in this world, and they were everything to me. And then they pass away due to some kind of chronic illness or an accident. That could put me into a state of depression. But it's not that I've done an activity that's directly put me into a state of depression, but actually I have this strong connection to someone, and because of what's happening to them, I'm now feeling this state of depression. So by karma, we simply mean the activities of this world can put each and every one of us into that state. However, what we also find is, as we elevate our consciousness, especially through certain spiritual activities, cultivating of spiritual wisdom, it gives us more strength to navigate through some of these situations if and when they appear in our lives.
Yeah.
Okay? So it has a role to play if we take advantage, and again I stress this, if we take advantage as part of our daily or our life path, rather than just waiting for the emergency. Yeah? It's a really important point.
No, I agree with you 100%. You have to have that stable, solid basis that you're building spiritually in your life to help you with everything, really.
Yes.
We have another question from Smara Haridas, which says, Hare Krishna, maybe you've touched on this already, but what are your thoughts on neuro-linguistic programming, the NLP practitioners?
Okay, I know Smara Hari, so it's always good to see you. Thank you for your question. What are my thoughts on neuro-linguistic programming? So let me just explain what it is, just in case some people don't know, because otherwise they won't have context. Neuro-linguistic programming is, let's say, a series of understandings which are about how we can reprogram the mind. Okay? And I would say, just from things that I've read and heard, that there is a place to it. There is a place to it. I would say that neuro-linguistic programming, it has some elements of functionality which literally mirror what happens when one engages in a deep way with transcendental wisdom and spiritual association. Okay, so the essence of neuro-linguistic programming is an attempt to change the way that we perceive things, change the way that we interpret experiences, and change the way that we behave. Okay. Now, in the same sense, but I would say in a deeper way, in a more complete way, when we engage carefully with transcendental wisdom, especially when we engage with mantra meditation using divine names or sacred sounds, they do this, they achieve the same goal, but in a much more powerful way. Why? Because when we engage with higher wisdom or transcendental knowledge, what are we doing? We're literally changing our perception, but we're aligning our perception with reality. This is a big thing. One of the biggest and hidden causes of stress is when my expectation is far above my experience. There was a study on what they call CEO depression. So you had young people who had literally worked their socks off, studied hard, denied themselves so many things. They'd aced their exams, gone to the best universities, kept climbing up the corporate ladder. They weren't happy, but they thought, when I become the head of the company, life will really begin.
Yeah.
And the CEO depression came because they'd attained those heights and they'd seen that it was not what they were expecting it to be. Many famous people have, and you can find many statements about this, many famous people have said, actually fame is not what you think. Because sometimes when a person becomes famous, they don't necessarily see all the things that come along with it inevitably. Okay, so now you're being stalked. You're famous. Now the friends and relatives that you have who were nice to you before, now they all want something. My own mentor, he was talking about how, as an advisor to Muhammad Ali, he was with Muhammad Ali in his mansion early one morning. I think it was 4 or 5 a.m. Muhammad Ali would rise early. My mentor would always rise early. And they were discussing. Muhammad Ali told him, he said, when I was young, I always dreamed of being famous. He said, it was always my dream. And now I've got wealth, I've got houses. He said, I could fly people in all over the world to come and see me. He said, but now I'm more miserable than when I was young. And he said, the reason is now I can't trust anyone. Everyone who comes to me wants something. He said to the Swami, he said to my mentor, he said, Swami, you're literally the only person I know who comes to me with a desire to give. Everyone else comes with a desire to take. I can't trust anyone. I'm paranoid. Someone's going to sue me. Someone's going to ask for something. So this is the point. Anyway, I don't want to go too far into that. But the point is that the neurolinguistic programming, it aims to reframe the way that we look at things, the way that we act, therefore, and how we move in life. But it is, I would say it is like a more simplified version or more primitive version of a higher order of that, where we have what we call Shastra or Vedic literature, which helps us to adjust our vision, but to see things as they truly are and to live our life according to the vision of reality.
100%. Okay, we've got another good question coming through from Joseph. He says, overthinking is the art of creating problems that didn't exist. What kind of training does the mind and consciousness need so that we are empowered and in control of the mind?
It's a great point. So in the Bhagavad Gita, it has an incredible framework. It talks about what is called the 3 modes of nature. Without going into all the detail, what I would just emphasize is that the mind can be in a low energy state or low consciousness state, whereby it's very fearful. It tends to be very easily disturbed, right? And that's a very anxious or regressive state of mind. The mind can be in a category that we call passionate. In that state, the mind has huge amount of desire for material things. So a sense of greed. The mind can be very much overwhelmed in that particular state by this desire to just accumulate more and more, potentially a great sense of attraction or arousal in terms of lust. Okay, so that's the mode of passion. And the mind can be in a state of what we call goodness. In a state of goodness, the mind feels very tranquil, very peaceful, and the mind also is very stable in that particular state. So what the mind needs or requires as training is a lifestyle and practices that will bring the mind more into what we call the realm of goodness. And in that realm of goodness, the mind being very peaceful, it's not overthinking anymore. In that state of goodness, the mind being very stable, it is able to easily focus and it's naturally inclined towards the things that will give real satisfaction, as opposed to being dragged into or being enslaved by the manipulative forms of advertising or marketing, which will cause the mind to become attached to something that will not give any peace to us as individuals.
Thanks, Bhuta Bhavana. We've got a question here from Kelly. Research shows that social media is addictive by nature. How do we use social media and not become addicted to likes and numbers of followers?
Okay. So I was trying to look into this carefully, and I was trying to use some of the insights of the Bhagavad Gita to look into how we can change this. I mean, that's a whole seminar in of itself, but I'll give you a few ideas. You see, what happens is that we have certain fundamental human needs, and they can be fulfilled in a healthy way. But if they're not fulfilled in a healthy way, we become susceptible to trying to fulfill those needs in a more artificial way. So you have the natural versus the artificial. So this idea of becoming addicted to likes and numbers of followers, if we dig into it, what is the underlying healthy human need, right? The underlying healthy human need is for a sense of significance, a sense of appreciation. When you have likes and followers, it means you're being recognized. People notice you, people respect you, people appreciate you. Okay. So what we do is we trace things back to the underlying need. And then we see how to fulfill that underlying need in a healthy, more natural way. Because if we don't, then we become slaves of the more artificial way of looking at those needs. And the difficulty with the artificial way of doing it is that those artificial strategies, they literally enslave us. I'll give you an example. I know many people on social media, they engage, they start to get some likes, some followers, etc. And now they're forced to keep doing things on social media in order to get more likes and followers. So they're now a slave. I've got to come up with new content because otherwise people won't follow me. You know, my followers are dropping off. I've got to do something even more outrageous than what I did before. And so they don't see it sneaking up on them, but they've now become a slave of their own social media account. They're spending more time, more money, more energy, more of their thought patterns are going to how they can keep people's attention. And it's a trap. You see? So what we're looking for is what's the underlying need and how do I fulfill this in a healthy human way? So with followers and being addicted to likes, the better solution is to come into and build real and healthy friendships where there can be real heart-to-heart respect, honoring, and appreciation. To the extent that we don't have that, to that extent, we'll be forced to go in this direction. In the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about this, that one is able to give up something of a lower quality by developing the higher alternative. Param Drisva Nivartate. That's how we will overcome this lower need, by making sure we put more time and energy into cultivating more healthy and human expressions of those needs.
Thank you. And this links quite nicely into our last question for this afternoon. And it comes from Jenny. Belonging to a religious organization comes with its own set of challenges. For example, pressure to conform or not being able to live up to high demands or ideals. Mm-hmm. How do we deal with this?
Great question. So belonging to a religious organization comes with its own set of challenges. Definitely. There's a lot here. I'll share two things. The first factor I would emphasize here is how we see the challenges, right? So we all face challenges in life, whether you're part of a, let's be very honest, you can be part of a religious organization or not part of a religious organization. You're going to face challenges. So first of all, we shouldn't be hung up on the fact that it's there within religious organizations. It's there across the board. A study was done. Scientists were studying how a caterpillar transforms into a butterfly. And they saw that at one stage, the caterpillar develops this cocoon, and in the cocoon, it undergoes this transformation. And then they were watching. They were watching as the butterfly was breaking out of the cocoon in order to fly. And they were watching. And they were watching the butterfly struggling to come out. And the scientists decided, we're going to help. Well-intentioned, compassionate. They decided we're going to help. They cut some of the cocoon open to make it easier for the butterfly to escape from the cocoon. And it did escape. And when it escaped, it stretched its wings out. When it stretched its wings out, it started to flap its wings in order to fly. And nothing happened. It flapped its wings even more in order to fly. And nothing happens. And the scientists were baffled. How is it that this butterfly can't fly? So they did some evaluation and they realized their mistake. They realized that the struggle that the butterfly makes in order to break through the cocoon, that last stage of struggle was nature's way of the butterfly building the strength in its wings so that it could exist in its next stage of evolution. So one of the most powerful things that we can understand is that actually, especially when we're connected with divine understanding, the Supreme never makes that same mistake. So the first thing is to see, when we go through the challenges, what are the challenges and why am I going through those challenges and what am I meant to learn through those challenges? And when we have that perception, then we can even see the challenges as a sign of the affection of the Supreme. And what that does, think about this point. When you're going through something and you feel inspired, it doesn't feel like a challenge anymore. When you're going through something and you feel inspired, you know this is for my best interest. This is going to help me to grow. This is going to help me to move into another state of higher consciousness. Then the challenge literally becomes exciting. So the first point is to understand the challenge in its proper context. Now, along with that, we want to go through those challenges through a supportive network of association. A challenge is not a challenge when you have true friends, right? A challenge becomes a collective bringing together of people who love you, who care about you. And what do they provide? They provide the emotional support and they provide the spiritual wisdom to see literally every obstacle as an opportunity to grow and experience more divine love and divine association. So with both a transcendental perspective and healthy, meaningful, loving and supportive association, we can transform our challenges into successes.
Thanks so much, Bhuta Bhavana. And just as a wrap up, I would encourage everyone to just be themselves. You know, if you're true to yourself with no pretense, you can acknowledge, okay, I'm at the start of my spiritual journey and I've got a long way to go. And obviously there's going to be bumps along the road, but I just should remain committed to who I am and to the journey. And then hopefully you'll be able to work your way along in a successful way with those friends and those close contacts that do give us the inspiration as we go along.
Megan, I think
sorry.
I can't say no, just because it was such a beautiful point. I just want to echo your point. And this is really important. If we're being ourselves, then the people who accept us for who they are, they're our friends. Mm-hmm. You see, a friend is someone who accepts you as you are. They know the path that you've been on, and yet they still lovingly invite you to grow. So it's all three factors. I understand your journey. I understand where you are and who you are right now. And I'm also going to encourage you to keep moving on the journey. That is the definition of a true friend.
Yeah, that's truly wonderful. Thank you so much for all the knowledge and the sharing that you've given us all today. I know that I deeply appreciate it, and I'm sure all those watching do as well. To move on, thank you, Bhuta Bhavana. I'm going to hand over to Mr. Gopi Chand for the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Bhuta Bhavana Prabhu. What an enlightening, informative lecture. Really helped us explore a lot that we haven't actually delved into so far. Thank you, Megan, for your professionalism and expertise as the Master of Ceremonies. I would like to extend my gratitude to the BBT Africa Events and Marketing team for their hard work and dedication in putting this event together. I'd also like to thank the BBT Africa team, our Emeritus Trustee, His Holiness Bhaktivedanta Swami, and our Senior Trustee, His Grace Govardhan Das, for their support and gratitude. And finally, a special thanks to you, our online audience, for your interaction throughout this lecture. Thank you for attending. Looking forward to our next looking forward to your next year, to our next year and participation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you. As we conclude today's presentation, should you wish to find out more about Srila Prabhupada's books and teachings, you can visit www.bbtafrica.co.za, or if you require more information, you can also email info@bbtafrica.co.za. Please also like, share, and comment on the lecture, as the recording will remain online. Also take note of the numbers coming up on the screen. If you or a loved one are suffering from depression or anxiety, you will have some contact numbers that you can reach out to. So we thank all of you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you all next year. Take care and God bless.